Hey everybody, I'm Hunter Hayes, and this is One Mind Brainwaves. Welcome. Glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. Really excited about this one. I'm excited about everyone, but I'm also very excited about this one. Each September, One Mind brings together musicians, chefs, scientists, and brain health advocates for a music festival.
The music festival is a magical thing.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this 25th Music Festival for Brain Health.
It is a day of excitement, a day of hope, a day of inspiration, and a day of joy.
Who's ready to learn and be inspired today?
Oh, the atmosphere is incredible. It really is a movement.
Brain illness and injury can be mastered.
The Music Festival for Brain Health is for anyone interested in brain health science, anyone wanting to celebrate life, anyone wanting to connect with others who deal with brain health challenges either in themselves or their families, and partake in the glorious day that it is every single year, and come away feeling like you've been enlightened and inspired and enjoyed the heck out of yourself at the same time.
This is the biggest single fundraiser for mental health research, brain research in the country every year.
I love that it brings together the best scientists in the world. I love that it has all-star musical presentation and that people get to enjoy themselves in one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Proceeds from the festival are used to accelerate brain health research. Last month's Music Festival for Brain Health raised $7.5 million. Now, this brings the total proceeds of the festival up to $500 million, which is an absolutely astounding number. Today, we're going to be joined by Shari Staglin, who co-founded One Mind and co-founded the Music Festival for Brain Health that One Mind produces every year. We're also going to be joined by Dr. Carrie Bearden, who is a neuropsychiatric professor at UCLA. We're going to talk to Shari and Kerry about the connections between music and mental health, which I'm very excited to talk about, and the science that One Mind Music Festival has helped transform. So welcome. Again, we're glad to have you. Feel free to comment, any questions, share this with anybody you feel like can benefit from this conversation and all this information. I know every time I get to have these conversations and host this, I get a lot out of it. So please feel free to share. Shari Staglin is the founding president and board member of One Mind's Music Festival for Brain Health. Shari, we're so thrilled. I am so thrilled to talk to you. We are so thrilled to have you here. You're one of the most integral parts of this entire operation, but I still get to say welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for having a conversation with us.
Thank you, Hunter. It is an honor to be here with you. And I think you're adorable. And it's also an honor to be here with Kerry. And I just realized when you said it, Shari and Kerry rhyme. So here we are together. I think that's perfect.
It's very fun to say.
Yes.
It's very fun to say. It makes my job really, really enjoyable. Okay, so before we jump into the festival, I want to go back to the origin of the origin story, if you will, but sort of the beginning of all of this, and speak to you as a mother. So as a mom, I would love to hear about how you learned about Brandon Staglin's mental illness and sort of the beginning of that process and what that was like for you.
It was 1990. My husband and I were in Paris. We got called off the dance floor. Darren's mother was calling us from California to tell us that Brandon was in a mental hospital. We had just left him where he was home for the summer from his first year at Dartmouth. We had no idea there was anything wrong with him. So we immediately got the next flight home the next morning. And I cried all the way back on the plane, thinking there's got to be some mistake. There's something wrong. And we didn't even know how to explain it to Shannon. So we got home at 10:30 at night, went to the hospital, got him out and took him home. And as soon as we got home, he said, I can't sleep in my bed. He'd been sleeping in this bunk bed for years and years. And he was then 18. He said, I can't sleep in this unless you take the top bunk off. So we couldn't reason with him. And so we took the top bunk off and carried it out to the living room, and then he went to bed. Next morning, when I got up, I saw him out in the backyard through the kitchen with Garen by the pool. He was jumping up and down and moving his hand back and forth on his head like this. In retrospect, he has explained it to us as he had lost the right part of his brain, and he was trying to keep any other thing from going in there and taking over where the brain had been. At any rate, we knew he was very sick, and we sought help immediately. We are grateful in a way that he was so acutely sick, because there was no denying it. It wasn't something that crept up on us. It was there, and we had to get help right then. And we know now that if you don't get help early, the disease progresses and progresses. So thankfully, we did start seeking help, but it took a while to find the right meds and the right therapy. And we had to educate and treat ourselves first. My husband and I, as a man and a woman, dealt with this very differently. And we, it was like, oh, well, it's your fault because you're doing it this way. It was your fault because you're doing it that way. And when I went to college and studied psychology, I learned that it's usually the mother's fault if there is a mentally ill child. So I needed to get over that sense of guilt. And thank God we had a friend psychologist who told us that this is genetically based and it's environmentally triggered. They didn't know what it was. But, and I said, well, why? We have to figure out why this happened. But, you know, we were lucky to have a PhD in psychiatry and neuroscience test him for a day and came up with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. And so we had a name for it. We had something that we could go toward and go after to fix. Another thing that I learned that helped me so much, because we were very involved with UCLA. Garen and I met on a blind date at UCLA many years ago. And there was a doctor there that had written a book about expressed emotion in schizophrenia. And family members, if they show emotion, if they show they're upset because the person, the brother, the child, the son is sick, then that makes them worse because they feel like it's their fault that you're upset. So we learned to treat this very matter-of-factly and scientifically. And that helped a lot. It helped us a lot, and it helped him, I think. So from then on, our interaction with him was, it's your job to get better. It's our job to help you get better. And we're going to work on this together until it happens and you'll get back.
Wow. So that seems like that's what's so impressive to me, is that you guys not only navigated this together as a family, and from the sounds of it, navigated it really well, all things considered. But not only that, I want to talk about your experiences in sort of trying to get treatment for Brandon and how that led you to start One Mind. What was the state of mental health research funding at the time? What was the state of mental health treatment at the time?
Well, I wish it were a lot better now than it was then. And it is better, but we need a lot more progress and we need a lot more speed in how we're doing things. It's because it's a shunned subject and because people don't want to talk about it. But we do have much better help than we used to in terms of understanding the physiological reasons for these diseases and treating those physiological reasons. So the meds are likely, I think they're better, although Brandon is, a new one came in, some years ago that was remarkably turned him around, even though he'd been in clozapine for a long time, and then something new came into this country called Abilify, and that brought back his emotions, and that's when he fell in love. So, but the meds are getting better, and I think the therapy is probably getting better, but the problem in this country is we don't have enough mental health professionals. We need more of those, and part of the problem is the lack of insurance coverage. So that's something else we're working on, to get better insurance coverage for brain health. And it is an organ of the body. It is the brain. So it ought to be treated the same as every other organ of the body.
Absolutely. So moving into, I mentioned the music festival at the beginning of this, moving into music and the effect that music has as part of this process. They seem, I guess on the surface, to me, it would seem that they're different, but my personal experience is that music has this and I can't explain it from a technical standpoint, but music does have this sort of healing capability. And it has, for me personally, it's been part of a lot of, healing processing, both internally and I guess helping me sort of process the world around me as well. And I know that I've seen it help in a lot of different ways, helping the healing process for other people. But even beyond that, I think we have a conversation in front of us that I'm really excited about, because I would love to know why it was so important to have this festival revolve around music for you.
Well, we didn't start out with the idea of a music festival. Somebody came to us with the idea, a conductor, and he didn't even partner it with mental health. But because we're in the wine business, and because we do wine and food things all the time and charity wine auctions around the country, we had met a chef, Charlie Trotter, out of Chicago. We had met a conductor who was the new boyfriend of one of our friends, and he was a conductor from New York. And he said, Shari, I've done a music festival on Shelter Island. Why don't I do a music festival at your beautiful vineyard? Because he'd come to visit us. He said, this would be so gorgeous to do it here. And I said, look, I'm just trying to get a new wine business started. I can't deal with music festival. So he said, well, think about it, and if you would do it, I would produce it for you. And so Richard Williams was our first conductor. He hired the San Francisco Ballet Orchestra as his orchestra because they were out of season. And, we dealt with the union and everything. But frankly, I mean, music meant a lot of sense to me because I was raised in a very musical family. When I was 4 and my sister was 5, we began singing duets in church. And we did from that time forward. So we've always, taken piano lessons, and my sister played the violin and the flute, and I played the clarinet and tried the saxophone, but it was too heavy for me. So, but yeah, music made a lot of sense to me, and it makes people feel good. And if you're going to deal with something as serious and scary to people as mental health, even though we try to call it brain health, then, you want something that makes people feel upbeat. And music can do that. And it does do that.
Yeah, I love that. So another part of this festival, so you guys showcase groundbreaking work of neuroscience and psychiatrists, and there's definitely a focus on established leaders, but you also highlight emerging research.
We decided when we first began that since there were no answers that had really solved these questions yet, and this was in 1994, then what we would do is try to find these young up and coming scientists that were going off in a promising new direction that nobody had tried that before, and see if we could then something new would emerge that would help. And so we started trying to fund scientists like this, and hence that's how we found Kerry through the UCLA CAPS program, which was the idea of a then young scientist who had this idea of why not try to do something that's preventive. And we said, perfect, we want to do that. There's no, he came up here to visit us. I remember sitting on our porch and just coming out with this idea. We were thrilled by the idea, and we said, yeah, we'll find the money to fund it. So that's one of the first things we did, and thank God it was successful, and Kerry's here, and it's one of the great prides that the music festival has been able to support and get started.
I'd like to welcome officially Dr. Carrie Bearden. She's one of the scientists that the music festival has supported. She's a professor at UCLA, where her work focuses on, I'm going to try to say this right, neuropsychiatric conditions. Okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. She's also the director of the Staglin Music Festival Center for the assessment and prevention of prodromal states at UCLA. And now that I've said all that successfully, Carrie, welcome to the show. It's good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so now that I think I said it correctly, but what does prodromal mean? Educate all of us.
You did say it correctly. So prodromal, it means the early signs or symptoms of an illness or a health problem that appears before the major signs or symptoms start. So for example, a fever may be prodromal for measles, but these prodromal symptoms are often not very specific. So it's important that you consult with a mental health professional early if you have concerns about yourself or a loved one experiencing potential prodromal symptoms of a mental illness.
I'm learning a lot. So your work aims to reduce the rates of psychosis in adolescents and young adults. I'd love to know more about why it's so important to focus specifically on the mental health of kids and young adults.
Yeah, this is a great question. So it is critical to intervene early because the brain actually has so much more plasticity in adolescence when, in younger folks. And so this is really what we think of as a sensitive period where there's a real opportunity to change trajectories. And so you can really correct the course, before the train has fully jumped off the track, so to speak. And there's a lot of evidence now that earlier intervention really leads to better long-term outcomes. And I want to thank Shari for, sharing your story and Brandon's story. I think it's just such a great, it's such an inspiration and also such a great example of how early intervention can really make a difference.
So when you sort of started out in your academic career, what was the state of funding for mental health research?
And so one thing I want to clarify, and which I think Shari also pointed out, is that funding for mental health research, even now today, is still really minimal compared to funding for other medical disorders. It certainly, we think increased somewhat, which is great, but it should be better. And so one thing that I think has really changed about the way that mental health research is done is the extent to which back when I started back in 2002, 2003, the extent to which this work was really siloed. So everyone was working in their own individual labs and, on a small scale. And now things have really shifted, particularly when you're doing work with humans, where it's really much more of a multi-site team science approach. And that's really, I think, the best way to make progress.
Yeah. How has the music festival that we were just talking about, I'd love for you to share how it's, contributed to what you've been able to do.
Oh, so much. It really was the seed that got us going. So it was really what allowed us to get started way back in 2002. That was when I first came to UCLA. And this was before the National Institute of Health was really funding this kind of work. So this funding was really what allowed us to get off the ground and to get started. And I have to say, in addition to the financial support, the faith that the Staglins have given us, really that faith in what we're doing, that's also been hugely important. It's a big part of it. And now One Mind is contributing to supporting funding for this accelerated medicine platform or partnership in schizophrenia. And this is a huge international effort to develop novel treatments. So when I think from where we started to where we've come, and One Mind has been there all the way, it's really inspiring.
That's incredible. Is there a connection? Do you see a connection between music and mental health?
Absolutely. Music is, it's such a profound emotional experience. And ultimately, music happens, you experience music in the brain. So they're sort of by definition interconnected. And we see just so many areas where music, can really improve mental health.
That's awesome. So we're going to show a clip of Ryan Tetter from One Republic, who performed at last month's festival.
And so I think that what you guys are doing is absolutely brilliant. I have 4 direct family members that have the full spectrum of brain issues, mental health. So I see it every year, every time I'm with them. So thank you for all the work you guys are doing, because we should be focused on this.
Yeah, and we actually now heard today Music is healing. Music
Oh my God, that's amazing. Is that true? Eat up, drink up, have fun.
The festival's featured a lot of great musicians, including Jewel, Lyle Lovett, Melissa Etheridge, and Jennifer Hudson. And what's really interesting is that all of these artists have a connection with the mental health conversation and have had their own mental health journey influence their music and vice versa. We talked a little bit, we've obviously been talking about the link between music and mental health. And I could say for me personally, the writing process of music is really personal. Music is really personal. It's expression, and especially in the writing portion of it, you're sharing your, parts of your experience with the world, and it's a great way to process a lot of things. For me personally, I think it's a lot of for me it is therapy, and in several ways, I think my eyes have been open to what happens when I get to share. Even though I'm sharing from experience in my story, I'm sharing for the sake of other people having the conversation. One of the things that taught me this was a song called Dear God. I had a conversation with an artist named Andy Grammer for a podcast that he does, and we had a 45-minute conversation, a beautiful conversation about a lot of things ranging, honestly, all over the map, but it led us to this really deep conversation. We had a writing session scheduled right after the podcast, which I love. It's perfect timing. And it was the first time that I'd written a song about the confusion of what I was going through at the time. And it was, very much around the topic of self-worth and asking questions to religion and things like that. And while it was really nerve-wracking to share this with the world, and I didn't honestly think I would ever put the song out because it was so deeply personal, it turned into the biggest song on my last album. And I'm sharing this because we're actually going to be re-releasing a version of the album soon, and with more on it. And I think this has really opened my eyes to, I guess I'm speaking to my connection between music and mental health, because I've been able to have incredible conversations with people who have felt like this song gave them a room to walk into and have a conversation about their own mental health and share. And one of the things I love about One Mind is the destigmatize mental health mission, and the fact that we're normalizing the conversation. I think Dear God is a song that taught me a lot about that, and taught me to be more open about that with my fans and with strangers, which I love. And I'm grateful for that lesson. And I think if anything, I would want other creators to hear that as a message of empowerment and encouragement, and honestly, just anyone to be able to share what they're going through, to share their experience. With the world. I think music has allowed me to do that. And I think everybody has their own version of what allows them to do that. But I'm really grateful for music in my life because of the role that it's played in connecting me with people that I would have never been connected with otherwise, and being able to have these conversations that might not have ever happened otherwise. I talked to Jewel about a little bit about this on our Brainwaves conversation.
Music's been the best free therapy for millennia, since the beginning of man. We've used drums to heal ourselves. We've used the musicians should never underrate the power that they have to heal. I think Joseph Campbell even said the modern shamans, I hate to say that word because it sounds very disrespectful to real actual shamans who are alive and well in the world, but the modern mythology, the modern torchbearers of the myth would be poets and writers and playwrights and script writers. It has the power to create the mythology to move people's story, because it's how we relate to our story that can trip us up. Like nothing in my past has changed. All the facts in my history are still there. I'm just relating to those facts differently. And that's what healing is. I don't get to go back in time and make those things not happen, but how I perceive them changes, and that affects my decisions moving forward. And that's what healing is. It's powerful, because perception is power. And we want to be able to gain that. And music has the ability to do that, and it's free. So I think it's very, very powerful what music can do, and all the arts.
You're watching Brainwaves. I'm Hunter Hayes. I'm guest hosting this week, and I'm very excited to be talking about the connection between music and mental health. I've enjoyed every single one of these that I've been able to guest host. The conversations are brilliant. The information is so incredible, and I'm grateful that you're joining us. Feel free to comment with questions, share this with people who you think this might, who might get a lot out of this. And yeah, help us continue having this conversation around mental health and mental health research. So Shari Staglin is the founding president and board member of One Mind's Music Festival for Brain Health. Dr. Carrie Bearden is a professor at UCLA, director of UCLA's Staglin Music Festival Center for the Assessment and Prevention of Prodromal States. So, Carrie, you've presented your work at the scientific symposium that is part of the festival each year. I'd love to hear sort of a before and after on what you presented at the time and how the work has progressed, what's changed. Take me through the whole process.
Yeah, I presented for the first time, I believe it was 5 years ago, and I remember it so well, just because it was so incredibly exciting. The feeling was really just electric in some ways, because just the opportunity to share this work, not just with other scientists who of course are also there, but to present it to the people who are really the most invested in what we were doing. I think that was really a priceless opportunity, and there was so much. It really just gave me so much joy to talk to people who were really going to drive this forward, who are really the people who desperately wanted this, need new treatments. And so it really, as a scientist, it really inspires you in a different way when you're actually connecting with everyone who's going to, really benefit from this. And so what I talked about was our work on our multi-site study on predictors of biomarkers that are predictive of the development of psychosis and the ways in which we might actually be able to change that course of illness. And so so at the time we were making a lot of progress in these biomarkers, but I think when I look back on that to where we are now, where we've completed actually a whole decade of that work, and we have a much better sense now of what are these early biomarkers, both at the level of the brain, potential blood biomarkers, clinical predictors, and also what we can do early on to really change that course of illness. So I think we've come a long way. Obviously, we've got a lot more work to do, and so where we are now is really at the cusp, the starting point of this new international multi-site effort, this Accelerating Medicines Partnership, and which is an even larger study. And so I'm really, really excited about that. It's really aimed to, is a precision medicine initiative to identify treatments that are going to be the best suited for particular individuals.
I'm a big fan of something that you mentioned a minute ago, the connection. I imagine, and I would love to hear from both of you, the connection that happens when you get to hear from scientists about the work that they're doing, how that resonates with people who are contributing, and how that sort of like brings I think it just kind of makes it tangible. It makes it real. It makes it understandable or comprehensible. Is that a word? But I'd love to hear more from you guys, from both of you, about how presenting this research and presenting all of this to people actually helps them connect where they are and what they're doing and how they're contributing and how they're funding the science and understanding the science itself.
Well, I'll jump in here quickly, and then Carrie. It is remarkable to see the looks on people's faces. They are mesmerized listening to the scientists at the scientific symposium, hearing the scientific physical information they're getting regarding what causes and what goes on when people have these brain diseases, and the work that they're doing and how they're doing it to fix them. And it gives people so much hope, and they're amazed at the different approaches that scientists take to get these answers. It is truly remarkable and exciting. and hopeful, then the people that come to the music festival and hear these scientists just are in awe, and they in general say that that is definitely one of the best parts of the day, is to hear these scientists. That's number one. Number two, they actually see that the money they donated to come to the music festival is being used in a terrific way, a way that they could never do by themselves. So they appreciate the connection.
That's incredible. Carrie?
Yeah, from my perspective, just the, I think sometimes as a scientist, you're working on these things and, you get focused on your deadline or your manuscript submission. And really, this is just a reminder of why we do what we do. And I just think it's so critical, and it just gives you this renewed optimism and the renewed sense of urgency as well. As okay, we need to do this. We need to really make progress.
So taking sort of zooming out, how do we apply that? Shari, I'd love to hear from you on this. How do we apply that to the broader public? I think the same can be true, right? How do we connect those the dots for people on a larger scale? What's similar, what's different?
Yeah, it's one thing if you're doing a festival right here and only a finite number of people can share in that information and music. It's another thing when you actually have a national program of awareness, which is part of what you're doing, Hunter. This is brainwaves. This is something that's going out all over social media, and it's being picked up by so many people who are interested in seeing what's related to brain health, mental health, what's happening. And I know that there's so many different subjects being taken up on this brainwaves that Brandon, our son, started some years ago, and now it's become. Now you're helping with it, Hunter. Thank you so much. Lori Hernandez is helping with it. It's just incredible to have people at your caliber as great champions, really, to help us with this. So it's an awareness program. We've done public service announcements. We are doing a Ken Burns documentary on youth crisis in America related to brain health issues. That is a 3-year documentary that is being filmed already, going on the 3rd year, and will come out on PBS next April 2022. And this is going to enlighten and educate a lot of people and make it accessible, the information accessible and hopeful, so that people, the more we talk about it, the more people are going to get help when they need it, instead of try to hide it, because it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, wow, I'm really excited about that. I'm very happy to hear about that. And an honor to be part of the One Mind family and team. If we can go back in time, so, I want to talk about the 2001 festival for a second. It happened just a few days after 9/11. How did that feel? That there had to be a different. I guess I want to talk about, because we're just marking the 20th anniversary of it, and also dealing with the COVID pandemic, and I guess, more. I want to ask about the changes that have taken place in the last 20 years. 20 years, a long period of time. How do you think, I guess specifically, what do you think the changes are around the way that people talk about mental health?
I think that there is much more openness to talk about mental health on the part of youth, much more so than people my age, because for some reason, the young people feel more comfortable talking about mental health and being open about it. Now, we need to do even more. But nevertheless, it's come a long way, and I cannot exactly say why, but maybe because the word is out, people are getting educated that these are diseases, just like any other. It's a broken arm, it's the flu, it's COVID, it's a mental illness. So hopefully it's not going to be as bad as COVID if you get it taken care of early and you, quote unquote, get your vaccination. but I mean, by vaccination, I mean, you prevent anything from happening by, if you feel that you need help, get help. And I think people are more and more willing to do that, especially young people. And that's when it's important to get help. Going back to 2001 on 9/11, I will never forget that day. And we were all stunned. And the phone rang in the morning. A few things. My husband had called me from New York, where he was, because I couldn't get through to him. As soon as I heard it on the radio about the plane crashing into the World Trade Tower, I didn't know where his meeting was, but I was so grateful when he finally called me, because all the phones were busy. He was okay. But right after that, I got a call from one of our board members saying, Shari, this is Bill Melton. I'm still coming on Saturday to the music festival. And that was when it really dawned on me that we had a festival to put on that Saturday. And oh my God, our chef was from New York. Our conductor was from Boston. What were we going to do? So, that we had to get all the wheels in motion to make that happen. And in the end, the chef could not make it. We couldn't get him flown out. We got our board member to fly his plane to Boston to pick up the conductor, Ben Zander, the Philharmonic, to come here to perform. And I was running around trying to find a great big flag to put on the stage. But it was, and then we put all the 5 different Napa Valley chefs came together to create the food for that festival. So everybody kind of filled in. And of course, we didn't get a lot of the people that were going to come because they were from different places and couldn't get here. But, our own Napa Valley vintners came and supported it, and it was great. So I will never forget that conductor Ben Zander passed out the words to Ode to Joy. And we all sang at Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Hunter. Do you
Yes.
know that? Yeah. And that was very uplifting.
Wow.
That music.
That's incredible. I have so many more follow-up questions to that, but Kerry, I'd love to hear from you on sort of as we wrap up, I guess, because we're running out of time. I think we've expressed the importance of something like this music festival for brain health, but I would love to hear from you on on the importance of this festival and brain research and the impact that it has on brain research and the science.
I think it's absolutely critical, not only just this experience of all being together at a fabulous and incredibly joyous and inspirational event like the music festival, but also just the funding that the Staglin's One Mind provide for early young investigators. This is work that by and large is at a stage, it's what we call high risk, high impact work. It's risky. It's at a stage that the National Institute of Health is not going to fund it because it's considered too risky. And so it's really cutting edge work. And so it is really the way in which a lot of young investigators have gotten their foot in the door, have been able to do something incredibly innovative.
That's incredible. So Shari, it seems like we're entering into a whole new generation of mental health research, and there's a lot happening, and we've talked in this conversation about funding, and I would love to sort of know, what are the big areas that we need to invest moving forward?
Good question. And for sure, and I'm so glad that you're having Kerry on today, because preventive mental health is something that we are very much interested in funding more of. And Kerry's on the cutting edge leading that march right now. And we've gotten a bill through this state of California called EPI, Early Psychosis Intervention, which is exactly what Kerry's doing. And we've gotten a number of counties to take it on, although not as many as we need. I mean, we have 58 counties in California, but I think we only have 25 on board with this. So, but we're getting there little by little, and it's disseminating. The other area that we're working in, and we call that, that's early intervention and identification of youth at risk. Then we also are very interested in looking at stress, post-traumatic stress, and how so much early trauma leads to mental illness later in life. And so we've got a big program going. It's in, I believe it's 17 to 19 institutions around the country, led by an investigator, a lead investigator in North Carolina. So and we call that Aurora, and it's identifying the biomarkers for post-traumatic stress. So that's another area that we are focusing on. For sure, we're always delighted to have our brilliant scientific advisory board look at the young scientists around the country and pick out those who have the best promise of new ideas to get us maybe some new direction and new help for mental health. And the way we do that is we send out requests for proposal around the country to the leading institutions and universities, and to their directors, their heads of these departments of neuroscience and psychiatry, and ask them to nominate someone younger on their staff who shows promise. And then they get them to send in an application, and we send those applications to our scientific advisory board, of which Carrie is a new member. Thank you, Carrie. And then the scientific advisory board chooses who they think would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, how many most promising young scientists, and then however much money we're able to raise that year is what we'll be able to donate for these, we call them Rising Star awardees. So that's a shot in the dark for us. We don't know who we're going to come up with when we send these applications. The applications come in, and so we find out what's going on out there in the world, and see our scientists decide which looks most promising.
And I can tell you, being on the scientific advisory board, which is really fantastic, those applications, those Rising Star awards, they are incredible, really. Just, and the heartbreaking part is having to fund only, the top 3 or 4, depending on, the amount of funding available, because boy, there are some really incredible young folks doing really fantastic science.
That's incredible. Well, you guys are doing amazing work. I'm grateful that we have had the chance to talk. I wish we had more time. I'd like to finish with the lightning round. It seems to be the tradition here at Brainwaves. So, Kerry, I'd love to start with you. Lightning round questions, 5 questions. Here we go. So what helps you cope through a tough time mentally?
Talk to my family, go out for a hard hike, break out a sweat.
Love that. What's a song you turn to when you're feeling off?
I think my go-to is Let It Be by the Beatles.
Good one. Hobby or activity that helps you unwind and de-stress?
That's really going to be the getting out there, exercising, going on a really tough hike in a beautiful place.
What's one change that you want to see in the way that people think about mental health?
The biggest one to me is that it is an issue of willpower. This is a huge, this really gets me. This is not, you are not going to, because if you're feeling depressed, anxious, suicidal, it's not because you want to be that way. It's not because you're not trying hard enough.
Wow, that's profound. What gives you hope?
Seeing people get better. It's just amazing. Just young people really, working to they want to get better, and just seeing people and with their families, and just seeing how much things can change, just seeing how that course can really change direction.
That's amazing. Ms. Shari, I'd love to hear from you. What helps you cope when you're going through a tough time?
I think if I nag Garen more. Yeah, I mean, he and I definitely, we go back and forth, but he's always there for me. Okay, so that he helps a lot.
That's great. I love that. What's a song? What's your song that you go to when you're feeling down?
Interesting. I started thinking about that. I just love all songs, and I sing just about anything. But when I was younger, I remember Whistle a Happy Tune. Do you know that song?
I do, yeah.
And every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. So, and it goes on from there. And it's a really upbeat, happy song. But another one, because it was 11 years ago when my sister was dying of breast cancer, brain cancer, and she was in a coma. And we all had always sung together. And I would sing to her, and she didn't seem to understand or hear anything. But when I would sing to her, she would mouth the words. And the one that I remembered, because it's just the stupidest thing that came to my mind, was Maresy Dotes. Do you know that one, Hunter? Maresy Dotes and Dozy Dotes and little lambs eat ivy, like it'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? Ooh, you don't know that? If the words sound clear and funny to your ear.
That's new. Yeah.
And it gets mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. She sang through with me on that. She didn't sing, she mouthed the words. So it's amazing how your brain works connected with music.
Yeah, that is wild. Thank you for sharing that. What's a hobby or activity that helps you sort of unwind or de-stress?
Every day I'm up at least by 5 and work out my aerobics, and then, weights and stretching, but always aerobics and walking. So kind of the same kind of things that Carrie said, just a lot of good exercise keeps me pretty much on an even keel. And I would say other things that help me on a daily basis. I meditate. Headspace is an app. I also do Brain HQ, which is probably less about mindfulness and more about keeping my brain sharp or my memory sharp. So I do, and that deals with the neuroplasticity, and it's helpful. So those are some of the things that I've worked on that we've learned about here through One Mind.
That's fantastic. What's one change that you want to see in the way that people think about mental health?
I want people to talk about it more. I want people to really deal with it as if it is the same thing as any other illness, and just be open and talk about it. And that way, I think people will be much more likely to get help when they need it.
What gives you hope?
The science. The science really gives me hope, and it's exciting, and the kind of things that are being found, plus the awareness, people talking about it. We really are hearing more about it now than we used to. So little by little, these changes have come, and I believe they are going to continue in that direction. And it is the science that really gives us hope, and the biomarkers that we're finding, and then we're going to find the molecules that can treat them, and we'll get there.
That's amazing. Well, Kerry, Shari, it's been a privilege to talk with both of you. Thank you for letting me be part of this conversation. Thank you for sharing everything that you did, and thank you for the work that you're doing. We sincerely appreciate it. Now we're going to turn to another branch of our One Mind family, our team at the One Mind Cyber Guide, for their review of this week's mental health app pick of the week.
Hi, my name is Martha Neary, and I'm the project manager of One Mind Cyber Guide. At One Mind Cyber Guide, we provide advice and guidelines to people who are interested in using mental health apps. Mental health apps can be a great tool to add to your mental health toolkit. Research has shown that apps are especially helpful when used as an add-on to traditional treatment with a licensed provider. In one study, which looked at apps to help reduce depression and anxiety through skills-building exercises, participants saw benefits from using the app for just under 1.5 minutes each time. This suggests that even using an app for a couple of minutes each day might be helpful for you. Most good habits can take a little while to form. Building the use of an app into the daily routine that you already have may help you use it in a more sustained way. For example, maybe you brush your teeth and then use the app, or use it after dinner. Most apps also allow you to set notifications, which can be really helpful to remind you to use the app regularly. Cove is an app that allows users to build instrumental music to match their mood. The app is founded on the idea of expressive therapy and is intended to help users express their emotions where verbal expression might be challenging. Users start by selecting one or more feelings that they are experiencing and selecting background music which they feel represents how they feel. They can then add different types of bass, melody, and percussion to create their own unique sound. Users can store their musical creations in the Cove journal to listen to later or to share with others. Visit our app guide at onemindcyberguide.org to read the review of Cove. It receives a score of 2 out of 5 on credibility and 4.33 out of 5 on user experience. We look forward to seeing you next week for another app review.
Thank you to our Cyber Guide team. We appreciate it. Also, once again, thank you so much, Shari Staglin and Dr. Kerry Bearden, for joining us, for letting me be part of this conversation, for sharing what you've shared, for doing the work that you've done. Viewers, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spreading the word. Thanks for sharing this conversation. Don't forget, you can still continue to post your questions. You can also check out other Brainwaves episodes, and I encourage you to do so. onemind.org/brainwaves. There's so much to learn. And yeah, join us for another Brainwave sometime. Thank you so much for letting me guest host. Thank you for being here. Yeah, be good to yourselves and be good to the world around you. Cheers, everybody.
Every day trying to find the strength. I just want things to go back to normal.
Science has collaborated to find treatments for the virus. Vaccines were developed in record time.
I don't know what to do.
But what about the mental health research needed to sustain our lives during and after the crisis? OneMind is funding the science to revolutionize treatments and provide hope. OneMind, accelerating brain health for all. Help us fund new treatments at onemind.org.